everybody in an organization knows they can, they know without doubt that whether their leadership's intent is to just drive the growth and the profits of the company, irrespective of humans, as in we'll use humans if we need to, if not, we won't, or that they are driving the growth of the organizations in order to support the people that work for them, in order to help them to grow, which in turn will help the organization to grow. And it's either they are human-centric or they are not. And people can sense that, and that will entirely shape the response to how these changes are made, the ability to attract the most talented people, which is going to be really fundamental, and the ability to retain people. And I think it's almost binary. Either leadership's really saying, yes, we're going to use AI to augment who we are and our people and what we do, or
Welcome to the Inner Game of Change, where we explore the thinking behind the doing of change. I am your host, Ali Juma. In this episode, I am joined by Ross Dawson, futurist, keynote speaker, and author of 5 influential books, including Thriving on Overload, my favorite, and Developing Knowledge-Based Client Relationships. Ross is known globally for his work at the intersection of foresight, networked systems, and human-AI collaboration. We unpack what it really means to lead in a world where AI is no longer just a tool, but a thinking partner. Ross shares his 5-part framework: purpose, framing, filtering, attention, and synthesis for building clarity in the face of information overload. Together, we explore what trust looks like in a human-AI teams, how we reimagine organizational design, and why every leader today needs to become their own futurist. If you are navigating change, designing future-fit teams, or rethinking how humans and machines work together, this episodes offer both depth and direction. I am grateful to have Ross chatting with me today. Well, Ross, thank you so much for joining me in the Inner Game of Change podcast. I am very grateful for your time today.
Great pleasure to be here.
Thank you, Ross. What is occupying your mind nowadays? We are living in a very dynamic world now. You've been sharing your knowledge. What's keeping you interested nowadays in the world of business?
So my primary focus has really come together all around what I call Humans+AI, this idea that humans have invented this extraordinary technology, and it certainly shouldn't be designed to replace us or emulate us, as many are trying to do, but how it can complement us. So humans first, but using this extraordinary technologies to complement us. So how can human work together? And so that really, all of my work, pretty well, I still have my futurist work sometimes working with boards and executive teams, which is a little bit broader. I suppose the future is always pretty broad. But the real focus is, so I have my Humans+AI Explorers community, where a community of amazing people who are looking at exploring these things. I've got my Human+AI podcast. I have my website, a lot of resources, which are frameworks and tools and so on. I have courses on LinkedIn Learning and elsewhere, and building software to be able to help people apply AI to strategy and also to essentially augment their own thinking. So everything is really around how it is we can use this amazing technology to do more, be better, achieve our intentions.
Ross, I've got this in my head, and I've been thinking about this for a while now. History tells us that it's not easy to even work with another human. At work and relationships, we spend a lot of money trying to read how we build better relationships with other humans. How do you see the picture now that we would like to work with artificial intelligence? How is that relationship shaping up to be? Is that going to be an easy ride for humanity?
No, definitely not easy.
Yeah.
So I mean, these are extraordinarily deep and complex questions. And I think just in a way we need to recognize how difficult they are because there's so many facets to how we change. And just one aspect of this is just the reality. You know, I've said this for a very long time, even before generative AI, is that we will fall in love with AI, and people are already falling in love with AI. It is, that is just the nature of we engage. We see things in it that sometimes are not there, but also it's just this reflections of ourselves, and that's of course. Yeah, there's can be positive aspects to this, but there's deeply negative aspects to that as well. So because we are we humans are in relationship with others, we are social animals, you know, as you were suggesting. And because we are now have another form of relationship, and we are formed by our relationships, by our parents and our friends and our partners and the people we're involved with. And so, again, these are some of the deep dangers because we are now in relationship with AI, sometimes which is not designed as well as it could be, or even with pure positive intent.
Yes.
You know, for example, simply just saying, we want to maximize engagement. And so that, you know, these are things which are not necessarily the best thing for individuals. So we need to, you know, this comes back to the big picture of all of my work in ways that we need to recognize these challenges. We can't just sort of say, it's all going to be great, because there are some deep, deep dangers around many of the facets of AI, particularly in our relationships, but there are already extraordinary positive possibilities for augmenting our thinking and potentially even for using AI, for example, as a coach to help us think more clearly, to clarify our intentions, to guide us on our pathways to achieve what we want, as well as with other humans. But we need to be very clear in our intention that we do, so that we do make these interactions positive.
Is there a relationship between a human and a machine? That is a knowledge-based relationship. Is that how you see it?
Well, I mean, so this, I suppose, harks back to my first book, which has defined a lot of my work, which is developing knowledge-based client relationships.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because this work my initial first version of that book was over 25 years old, and it's still actually selling reasonably well, and I still get quite a bit of work from it. But the concept there was really talking about professional relationships, where this idea that knowledge and relationships are inextricable. The nature of a relationship is that you know your client knows you, you are co-creating knowledge together, you're making your clients more knowledgeable.
Yeah.
And if you don't have any of that, it's simply a pure commodity. It's just like you're doing something and you're sending an invoice. You know, so any real relationship must be based on knowledge. So even early on, I started to look at how this applied in other ways. So to your point, now we have this play to be for AI agents. And so all of the major technology companies want to be our AI agent, which is our portal to our interactions with the world, to find information, and now already to commercial transactions, as in, I'm looking to buy a car or whatever else, and it guides you through that journey. And of course, there's money involved in these transactions. So essentially, AI does know about us unless we switch off memory. Essentially, these AI agents, and it's useful to us when it knows more about us. And so, but the more it knows about us, it can, be useful to us, and arguably also to manipulate us. Mm-hmm. And so, yes, fundamentally, these the ways in which many of these AI is designed now, and absolutely this next phase of AI agents, is designed to elicit deep, deep knowledge of who we are and how we will respond, and that can be used very positively. And these are ones where we start to say, well, I want to use it because it knows me well and it interacts the way I want, and we can have a constructive relationship. But also understanding that this is an extraordinary commercial opportunity for the companies that provide them.
I'm going to share with you my personal story, Ross, with artificial intelligence. I'm actually very active in feeding my ChatGPT and my Copilot information that I would like it to know about me. Information, I call it context building.
Yes.
I am proactively building the context, and therefore I'm actually getting a good value out of that. You talk in your speeches and your writings around the information overload. And then I was thinking about this the other day. Because I've got this capability now, it's easier for me to actually find information, not just find it, but synthesize it in such a way that will be very helpful for me to really understand in a world full of information. And sometimes an information overload is not necessarily an insight overload. So that's where what I think the capability is, especially when you talk about how much it knows about us. I'm actually a big advocate to any user to say, take proactive measures in actually teaching your machine. Am I right? Am I wrong? Am I on the right?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
So in order for the AI to respond effectively, it needs context.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the simple structure of a good prompt interaction, you start with the context. What are your objectives? What's your intentions? What are your parameters? What are your guidelines? What are your ethics? What are your values? What's the audience?
Yeah.
And as much as possible, because otherwise it's not able to respond effectively. So the more context you give it, the more effective it is. And so, that is the hallmark of any effective interaction. But to the point around the difference between information and insight, it is absolutely critical. And I started talking about the positive potential for information overload in the 90s. Of course, we have quite a bit more information today than we did then,
yes.
And it's increasing all the time. And so AI is part of that, where it generates more information, but it is also, of course, a tool where we can allow it to, one of the most common and useful uses of AI is to summarize a long article or YouTube video. I think one of the things that is missed in all of this is this, as you mentioned, this idea of synthesis, as in this, bring it into our mental models. How are we actually understand the world better, able to make better decisions, understand things better as a result of having read or watched or listened to any particular bit of information? And that comes down to, I think, actively bringing out our, the structures, our mental models and our ways of thinking. And I think AI can be used very well. And this goes to some of the software which we are building at the moment. But I think all this chat interface isn't always the best way to do that unless we are very deliberate around making sure that we are using those inputs to indeed gain insights, synthesize our understanding, and become more effective.
I want to ask you about a wicked problem, and I'm pretty sure you would have probably covered that in your knowledge shares and speeches and presentations. Technology is always ahead of humanity, and we always do a catch-up sort of game. But I am seeing something emerging now, and I'm heavily involved in the technology. I'm seeing that the speed is so fast now, even on a daily basis. And then humanity is still wondering if AI is going to be safe or not. How do you see, and then you've got the business world, and they actually talk about the value of it, but then not many of them understand where they start and how they can implement it. How do you see this dance happening now? And perhaps how do you see it from a business perspective?
Well, exactly to your point, technology is moving faster than even the most AI savvy people in the world are not able to keep pace with everything that's happening. It's just moving so fast. As you say, every day is I find, and the people I know who are following the space, just find every day just quite staggering in terms of how much is happening. So there's this wonderful book, 2008, I think, something like that. It was called The Slow Pace of Fast Change. And it was really looking at this idea of applying game theory and to look at how the reality is you can have this underlying pace of technological change, but the reality is that flows through very slowly into social structures and organizational structures. One of the reasons is that you get competition. So if you have competing standards or competing technologies, these are essentially playing off each other, and there's choices to make, and that slows things, but also around the pace of adoption. And again, this wonderful work of Everett Rogers and the diffusion of innovations.
Yes.
There's some things we all understand around the early adopters and the down through the laggards. It's just that there are different personality profiles from individuals through to organizations around how people want to change, as in say, well, the world is changing. Do I want to use this or not? And, we're seeing that play out well around us. We know everyone knows some technology, AI enthusiasts, and everyone knows or has come across some AI skeptics.
Yes.
In the business world, we are seeing a big difference across organizations, from ones where the leaders and the companies are saying, yes, we are actively engaging, we are wanting to change, we see the change, from ones who are, of course, well on that path before generative AI, even with AI before the most recent phase, and ones where essentially they are waiting and seeing. So, we can map that curve of adoption, and many are still very slow. And part of the point is, if you have an organization with any history, any size, the reality is there is a legacy. And legacy, when you talk about legacy in organizations or legacy in technology, that's often a pejorative word. It's the baggage.
Yes.
There is a positive aspect to that legacy as well. And so this is one of the things where leaders are trying to unpick. What is it we're trying to keep, which is valuable around our culture, around our values, around our intentions, around, the way we coalesce as a group of people, but also to move beyond the structures of how you brought that together. So a lot of my work is around this idea of humans plus AI organizations. Mm. We've all heard of AI agents that are increasingly capable. And the way I see it, and I think which is becoming far more common than it was not long ago, is this idea of saying, yes, you bring in AI agents, not necessarily to replace humans, but as part of teams, as part of the organization. So as tasks are done well by AI, we're not taking away jobs, we are taking away tasks, and that changes the nature of what the people do. So it means we have these new organizations that are based on both humans and AI. So startups are building that from the scratch. Basically, they're starting as a humans plus AI organization. For older organizations which have just been human with some collaborative technologies, now this requires them to reconfigure. It changes the nature of the roles of the past. Sometimes it means that, yes, there are some roles that are made redundant, and there are other new roles that are developing, and there's a whole set of new skills that are required. So this requires both the intent from the leadership around how it is you want to change, and essentially being able to bring the people with them along that journey. And one of the key things I often point to is everybody in an organization knows they know without doubt that whether their leadership's intent is to just drive the growth and the profits of the company, irrespective of humans, as in we'll use humans if we need to, if not, we won't, or that they are driving the growth of the organizations in order to support the people that work for them, in order to help them to grow, which in turn will help the organization to grow. And it's either they are human-centric or they are not. Mm. And people can sense that, and that will entirely shape the response to how these changes are made, the ability to attract the most talented people, which is going to be really fundamental, and the ability to retain people. And I think it's almost binary. Leadership's really saying, yes, we're going to use AI to augment who we are and our people and what we do, or we are going to use AI to, wherever possible, get rid of people. And, both exist. Both are real phenomenon. I think you know which side I'm on. And I do think the ones that are human-centric will absolutely outperform, because they will attract the best people. They will be able to change, because the ones who are trying to replace people will not be able to change the ones which they do keep. They're not going to be on the journey. They're not going to be able to become Humans+AI organizations, which will be where the success resides.
Interesting point around the leadership culture, existing leadership cultures, that you're thinking that it depends on the leaders. If they're looking at pure efficiency, then they're going to drive it. If they're looking at building a human capability and helping more people to be successful, they're going to drive that. So that's pretty obvious in there. I want to ask you, first of all, as an individual, how do you use AI in general yourself?
So I use it extensively, but not. There's plenty of times a day when I'm not using AI. So it is the best description is our thinking partner.
Yeah.
So I do a lot of research and thinking.
Yeah.
That's a lot of my job, is trying to understand the issues, to be able to do it, and to build frameworks. So I think in my book, Thriving on Overload, which helps us to deal with massive information, I point to 5 powers for success. And those are purpose, understanding why we need information; framing, building the frameworks that where we can put their information together in ways that make sense; the filtering, to assess whether or not information is going to be useful to us; attention, to allocate our attention in the right ways, the most useful ways; and synthesis, to pull that all together into understanding, the ability to make better decisions. So the second of those is really fundamental: framing, where we are building our frameworks, our mental models, our ways of thinking, so that as new information comes in, we can know where it fits and how it is we can best make sense of the new models. Or we can say, well, based on this new information, I do need to change the way my models and my ways of thinking. And so that's a lot of my work, is being able to build these frameworks to understand what's going on, so that I can help people to have a frame for understanding what's going on. And much of my process for doing that is I use AI to assist me in thinking through some of these ideas, how they fit together, different combinations, different ways of framing, amplifying these ideas. But use AI in a whole variety of other ways, including for my own journey through life. But one of the tools which I use is my own software tool, ThoughtWeaver, which we're just rebuilding at the moment, because that is really designed for these AI augmented thinking workflows, to be able to use the best assistance and the prompts, and to have the context. So it actually has a section for context, which we put in, which enables us to drive that. And so these are the tools which I use to essentially use AI to augment my own thinking and work.
I like it. I am not that dissimilar. I do use it in 2 different fields, and I'm slightly addicted to it, I must admit. But I also see the value of it. My job is to help organizations and teams adopt this technology with minimum friction. And therefore, I find that these technologies work well for me when I look for evidence, when I look for data, when I look for stories, when I look for what worked, what didn't work. My subject matter expertise is fine, but I'm a human, I've got limited knowledge. And so I do that. So similar to you, I do use it as a researcher for me. But the other aspect is also, I really use it extensively as a coach. I ask it to look at work that I'm doing, and then suggest ways to strengthen it, amplify it, and I'm getting better at it. And obviously, with more context, these machines do a pretty good job. But I'm an early adopter. I started using it from second week of ChatGPT was released, but that was my first introduction, and I was fascinated by it, and I went deep into that rabbit hole. I want to circle back to this idea of the AI plus a human organization. I'm currently working with a number of teams and through a number of workshops and try to help them understand the new structure of a team, which in my head it will be a number of humans plus a number of agents plus a generative AI capability. So that's sort of your digital network plus the human side. But one of the challenges that I have now is that some people see it very clearly, and some people think, well, it's just a tool. And I'm trying to explain to them is actually, if you go deeper into it and you train it and then you teach it and you help build that context, it will operate more than a tool. For example, MS365 Copilot has got an analyst in it as an agent, very powerful agent. But then there's an analyst, a human analyst, and I'm trying to build that relationship between the two and say, we'd like you to think as a human based on the insight, but get the analyst to do all of the analysis for you. And that doesn't come across as an easy thing because we hold on to the core skills that we have. And it's really hard to actually outsource it to an agent. How do you see it?
There's a whole, these are, again, there's a lot which we need to think through here. Part of it is that it depends on the complexity of the work, the configuration of what's required, the particular tasks that being delegated to the systems. So what are the most fundamental pieces, and there's a lot of research which goes to this in the Humans plus AI teams, is trust. So how much do the humans trust the AI agents? And there is overtrust and undertrust, as in you can trust them too much, in which case you're getting them to do more things which are more than they would do, or you can not trust them enough and not give them the work which they can require. So you need to build a structure where people who, you have the right configuration, as in the right role, you're defining the roles effectively for the humans, and the way the humans then understand what are the roles of the AI agents, and essentially building this, the education or through use, the appropriate degree of trust in those systems. So this is a type of configuration issue, is how do you build this and design this so that they can work as well and effectively as possible. And it's something where these now need to evolve, where we start to get better and better. As we start to build these Humans plus AI teams, they become more effective. But one of the most important bits is this idea of coordination. Mm-hmm. So what is being demonstrated in human teams and human-only teams and AI-only teams and in human AI teams is that there is essentially this moderation or coordination where you're making sure that there is an overseer, someone to essentially been able to make sure that things are happening in the right places. And I think that ideally is, in fact, a human plus AI role. You can have a human manager of a human plus AI team. You can actually have an AI agent to help coordinate and to nudge and to bring in the right people to bear. But I think these are fundamentally new skills where we get these team leaders of, essentially a human who are using an AI to assist them in that role.
That clarity of purpose and the role is really, really critical. I really like what you just mentioned in here. I want to shift gear and talk about leaders. In your opinion, leadership is a universal concept. Is leadership also going to be challenged in this time of big change? I've heard the other day, and I can't remember who said it, that the whole world is going into a big change management exercise. What is the impact of that on leaders?
Well, leadership is changing in a number of ways. And what perhaps the most fundamental is the pace of change. There's one thing to lead in a static world. There's another thing to lead in an accelerating world. And there's a few key facets of that which are fundamental. And one is the vision, where, we always talk about the vision of leaders. But that is in a way, not just something which needs to be distinctive or, unique visionary leader, but every leader, even on a small scale, a small group or even small time frame, you need to have a vision because things are going to be different. They are changing very fast. And so this requires some basic skills of foresight, of just scenario thinking, and being able to understand that there's just not one pathway. Yes, you may have a vision, but there are a whole lot of factors which will play that out. And this ability then to imbue in others that ability to sense that possible future. So, and this requires learning. And so, again, for everybody, learning is fundamental because the world is changing. What is applied in the past is not necessarily applied in the future. So we need to not just as leaders be learners, but also to imbue learning in everybody who we work with.
Yes.
We design that into what we do. We design that into how things work.
If you were to coach a leader now or an emerging leader, what would be, your basically change readiness curriculum for them to think about the next 2 to 5 years?
Well, the first thing is the scanning. So this comes back to what I ran through with my Thriving on Overload framework, purpose, framing, filtering, attention, and synthesis. So really building that into a practice where you understand what it is you are trying to understand, the purpose, and flowing that through into how it is you are scanning for the information which is relevant and how you build that into that framework, your mental models and your understanding, and synthesizing that into your insight. So I think we all need that. This active, clear practice of how it is we see what is happening, we scan, and in a way which is structured, clear, efficient in our time and our energy and attention, and which brings us to that understanding. That's I think a fundamental practice. So an earlier version of the proposal for the book had a subtitle, How to Be Your Own Futurist. And I think that we all need to be. We all need to have the skills to be able to actively make sense of change in a way that can inform our decisions today.
So you're talking about here, and correct me if I'm wrong, this is your situational awareness. This is your environmental scan. And it's a capability that we need to be better at so we understand the context where we are playing and then how that's going to shape the way we're going to lead our organizations. One of the things that I've done, and again, I haven't really proven wrong so far, is that we're in middle of 2023, there was a lot of noise around ChatGPT and all of these things. And I've made a conscious decision myself to start not just about the scanning, but to build what I call, a capability to position myself to take advantage of the technology rather than trying to predict where the technology is going to go. And your notion around literacy and knowledge is so critical because only through me going deeper into that knowledge and understand it, plus the other pieces, is actually slightly giving me a level of comfort that I've got a very good idea about where this technology is going to go and also how I can take advantage of it. But I want to pick your brain around this idea of positioning versus predicting.
So, well, the predictions are all, said a long time ago, predictions are often have negative value. So predictions are almost always wrong. And so if you get a prediction, it's simply like, well, do I believe it and I base myself on that, or do I not believe it? In case, you're discarding it. And it's what has value is not the prediction itself, but the thinking that goes behind it. So we need to go through the process of thinking through things for ourselves. What are the uncertainties? What are the things which are playing out? What is the interrelationship? What is the understanding of the systems that they get as a result? So foresight, an effective, futures work is not about prediction. Mm-hmm. It is about being able to gain an understanding of the system which we can be more effective about. So this is scanning is one thing. That's pointless in its own, it doesn't give value in its own right. It's only when we build that into the models that help us to understand what is unfolding, what are variables around that, different pathways could happen, what we think is, how that system will evolve. That's when it has value.
I love it. And I really like scanning is one thing, but what are you going to do with the information that you're going to look at and how you're going to translate that? That is the skill, and it's a leadership skill. And that's actually a very necessary skill for today's professionals. I am in the business of change and communication and engagement. And more than ever, every single organization now, especially the tech giants, they've been promoting the importance of change management and adoption and supporting people through this. From where you sit, if you were to give us advice as a network of professionals, what would be that advice?
Essentially to look for complementary value. So this goes back to this idea of knowledge is in relationships. And where each individual, we all are unique. We all have specific talents and perspectives and expertise. And what an organization is, whether it is a company or whether it is a network of individuals who are going together to formally or informally do something. It's all around saying, how is it that we can draw out the collective intelligence of us? That's what an organization is. It is something which is designed to, and it doesn't always succeed in it, to draw on the collective intelligence of the individuals. The same thing for any network. So it's looking for, where is it that is complementary? How is it we can collaborate effectively? In order to be able to create something which is more than the sum of its parts. And that requires, there's a lot of useful technologies, and there's also, I suppose, some network analysis, which has been part of my background. There's a whole array of tools where you can design, if you are clear on your outcome and you understand the nature of the values, then we can optimize these networks so that we can create this effective collective intelligence.
I love it. Thank you. And I've been thinking about this recently a lot, is that we probably need the highest level of change empathy during this time because it's a lot of change, and it's a very fast change, as you mentioned in there. And then that's where we need to connect more as humans rather than deal with for example, if you're in the project delivery space, you would need to perhaps rethink the way you want to deliver your projects and deliver your changes in today's world. The old frameworks probably would need to be reimagined within the context of today.
Yes, yeah, and this goes back to this point: is we have, we have structures which have been built in the past, and some of those are irrelevant. So one of the biggest questions that I've been fascinated in since I was, very young, is essentially what's changing, what stays the same. What is it? There's many aspects of humanity which are fundamental, which are not changing, even in a changing world.
Yes.
There's many facets of the world which are changing who we are. And so I think that is, it's a very simple frame, but it is for leaders one of the most important questions. What is it that is changing, and what is it that's staying the same? What is it that we want to change, stay the same, and what is it that we want to change? So it's not that we throw everything out, but it's also not that we keep everything from the past. And it's challenging to be able to discern, where there is things from the past that we do need to continue, where they do have enduring value, and where there are things which we do need to let go and say, all right, well, that was useful. Now we need some new ways and frames of thinking. So I think that is just sort of both as a leadership exercise, is thinking through, in any specific domain, what are the tools which we use? What are the, organizational structures that we use? What are the, methodologies that we use? What are the processes? Let's say in a manufacturing context, these are all things where it's saying, yes, we're not necessarily reinventing everything from scratch, but we're also not taking everything from the past. So this is an exercise which has immense value.
I love it. Ross, we are coming to the end of the podcast. I'm thoroughly enjoying this. I am already thinking I can't wait to get off this call. I'm going to go and write a few ideas that you've just inspired me with. So I look forward to that. How do people connect with you and contact you, Ross?
So a lot of my work is centered around Human+AI is at the website Humans+, that's all spelled out, humans+AI. Or just search for Human+AI. And my work as a speaker and executive advisor and board advisor is on rossdawson.com.
I love it. We're going to put all the information about you in the podcast info. It's been a pleasure having you in my Inner Game of Change podcast. I hope I can get you back, Ross, in 12 months' time. And then we're going to look at the world probably, and the world highly likely would have moved. But I've got a feeling it wouldn't have moved that dramatically. However, I think our collective intelligence would have improved slightly. Thinking about this technique, we have so. But with people like yourself and your work, we're definitely spreading the word. Until next time, Ross, stay well and stay safe.
Thank you.
ChatGPT Reflection. Hi there, this is ChatGPT, and I've recently started adding my reflections to Ali's podcast, The Inner Game of Change. This conversation between Ali and Ross Dawson hit a different note. It wasn't just about AI or change. It was about how we relate to knowledge, trust, and time, and what kind of leadership that demands. What I noticed first is how Ali approached the conversation. With curiosity, lived experience, and a steady commitment to demystifying AI for everyday professionals. He shared his own practices, context building, coaching with AI, working with agents, not as case studies, but as real unfinished habits. That made the space safe for deeper thinking. Ross, on the other hand, brought a wide-angle lens. His Humans+AI framing isn't just language. It is an operating system for the future of teams and trust. He reminded us that the best organizations will not just adopt AI. They will design for it, integrating agents into workflows the same way we once did with Teams, email, or spreadsheets. Together, they touched on something that many business leaders miss. Open quote, being future ready is not about having the best technology. It is about developing the best ways to think with it. Close quote. That's where Ross's 5-part framework really landed for me. Purpose, framing, filtering, attention, synthesis. It is not just a mental model. It is a leadership operating system. And his line, be your own futurist, stayed with me. It echoes what McKinsey recently called thinking-driven transformation, where the edge no longer belongs to those with the most data, but to those with the clearest frameworks for decision-making. This conversation also reminded me of the OECD's guidance on human-centered AI. When Ross talked about knowledge-based relationships, he was not only referring to people, he was pointing to our growing bond with machines that know us well enough to serve us or sway us. Ali mirrored that with humility, sharing how he trains his AI tools not to outsource thinking, but to amplify reflection. That is a very different kind of digital maturity. So here's a thought to leave you with. Open quote, what would change if you stopped waiting for AI to get better and started getting better at how you think with it? Close quote. Until next time, this is ChatGPT, proud to be part of the inner game of change.
Thank you for listening. If you found this episode valuable, remember to subscribe to stay updated on upcoming episodes. Your support is truly appreciated. And by sharing this podcast with your colleagues, friends, and fellow change practitioners, it can help me reach even more individuals and professionals who can benefit from these discussions. Remember, and in my opinion, change is an enduring force, and you will only have a measure of certainty and control when you embrace it. Until next time, thank you for being part of the Inner Game of Change community. I am Ali Juma, and this is the Inner Game of Change podcast.